Welcome back from Kyoto, Japan, the old imperial capital for more than 1,000 years, and an awfully pretty place. Final preparations are underway about 25 miles from here in Osaka for tomorrow's G20 summit of world leaders. The president will be there. We'll be interviewing him. Back in America, though, the 2020 election will be the first election in which children born after 9/11 will be able to vote, which is bewildering to those of us who lived through it. During last night's debate, Congressman Tim Ryan of Ohio said it's America's duty to keep fighting in Afghanistan for some reason, 18 years after we toppled the Taliban. That turned out to be a mistake. Tulsi Gabbard, the only veteran on stage, corrected him. Watch this.
Is that what you will tell the parents of those 2 soldiers who were just killed in Afghanistan? Well, we just have to be engaged. As a soldier, I will tell you that answer is unacceptable. We have to bring our troops home from Afghanistan. We are in a place in Afghanistan where we have lost so many lives. We've spent so much money that's coming out of every one of our pockets, money that should be going into communities here at home, meeting the needs of the people here at home. We are no better off in Afghanistan today than we were when this war began.
All obvious points, none of which you're allowed to say out loud in Washington. Now they make Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard seem like basically an untouchable. She is not allowed to get the kind of coverage that the rest of the Democratic candidates get. But the viewers loved it. At the debate, Gabbard's was the most searched name online. Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii joins us tonight. Aloha, Congresswoman Gabbard.
Aloha, Tucker.
So I couldn't help but notice, and I'm sure you don't want to play the victim in this, but that you had, despite the fact that you won a number of online polls, you had the most Google searches, your name after the debate, you got some of the fewest minutes to speak of any of the 10 candidates on stage, and you were the only one who was essentially attacked personally by the moderators. Why do you think that was?
Look, it shows that there's a clear bias in place. I made the most of every minute that I had. Wish I had the opportunity to have more time to address these important issues. But I want to just point out something from that clip that you played that I think is really important, where we hear a lot of politicians say this same argument that, well, we've got to stay engaged in the world, otherwise we'll be isolationists, as though the only way the United States can engage with other countries is by blowing them up or strangling them with economic sanctions, by smashing them and trying to overthrow their governments. This is exactly what's wrong with this whole premise and the whole view with which too many politicians, too many leaders in this country are viewing the United States' role in the world. How about the United States be a leader in the world, work out differences and build relationships with negotiations and diplomacy and finding common interests and seeing how we can work together so that we can stop sending our men and women in uniform into harm's way, serving in missions that do not serve the interests of the American people, that make our country less safe and actually end up causing more harm and more damage to the people in the countries where we wage these wasteful regime change wars. That's the kind of change in leadership that I'm seeking to bring as president.
You just mentioned sanctions. You're not questioning the ironclad bipartisan consensus in Washington that sanctions against Iran are morally righteous and can never be withdrawn, are you?
I am, absolutely. I think this is one of the things that is leading us closer and closer to a war with Iran, a war that would be far more devastating than anything that we saw in the war in Iraq. I served in Iraq in 2005 in a medical unit, and this was the height of the Iraq war. There were lots of American casualties almost every day, and I was confronted with that high, terrible human cost of war. A war with Iran would make that war with Iraq look like a picnic. Escalating these crippling sanctions, withdrawing from the Iran nuclear deal, designating Iran's military as a terrorist organization, something unprecedented, and continuing to deploy more and more U.S. troops. The neocons in the Trump administration and Saudi Arabia and Netanyahu have created a situation where it's going to be very difficult for President Trump to avoid a war with Iran. They have built all the building blocks, placed the dynamite, and lit the fuse, and it's going to be up to Donald Trump and his leadership whether or not he is going to cut that fuse and say, hey, we need to get back on track and put the interests of the American people and our country first and avoid a war with Iran, get back into that Iran nuclear agreement.
This is why the neocons hate you more than anybody. More than anybody. They're writing pieces about you right now.
But you know what?
Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, nice to see you tonight. Yes.
Nice to see you. As you pointed out really quick, this is an issue that conservatives, Republicans, Democrats, progressives, this is an issue that transcends party lines. And I think that's where the leadership I bring brings the opportunity to unify the country to make this kind of change that's important to every single American in this country.
That's exactly right. There's nothing partisan in the slightest about this at all.
Exactly.
And that's why it's so nice to hear someone say that out loud. Congressman, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tucker.